It's the Score North Twin Show.
Reckless speculation.
Oh, the floodgates, or I guess I should say the gas gauge on the hot stove. Wide open right now, boys. Oh, yeah.
Careful.
Yeah. We thought hot stove season was late November, early December. It turns out it was just a random weekend in February. So, the Twins, once Jorge Polanco was traded, it kind of opened up like a transaction pipeline here. So the Twins add Carlos Santana over the weekend, gentlemen. A longtime Twin killer in many ways, too, in the division for a while. Carlos Santana is about to turn 38 years old. He signs a $5.25 million 1-year deal, which also includes some performance incentives. So we've got that. We'll react to that. Judd has 5 geriatric Twins players who did work out well when they were brought in, much like Carlos Santana. And then we'll give you a TV update here. But just your initial impressions on switch hitter and first baseman / DH Carlos Santana joining the Twins.
I actually like this move a lot. I don't see what the downside is. This is a guy who has absolutely, positively tortured the Twins. But you know what? He remains a productive player. And as we'll get to in my list, this franchise has a history of bringing in guys who can be productive. The thing that really stood out to me after the news broke, by the way, congratulations, Darren Doogie Wolfson, scoop master extraordinaire, broke this news on Friday while I think at the Timberwolves game with his son's basketball team.
Yep.
So good for Doogs, great scoop. But the thing that stood out to me after Doogs broke this was the fact that Carlos Santana remains an incredibly viable first baseman. Like, he can DH, he can definitely platoon, but the fact is you are probably getting a better first baseman when he does play there than anyone the Twins have had to offer there in recent vintage. So there's a lot to like here. And I think as far as like the risks go, I guess somebody would have to tell me if there's some like hidden risk here. And I think he's a good clubhouse guy. And we've seen this before with, 1,000% Nelson Cruz back in the day, right? So yes, overall, I think it's going to be a very solid move. Because there are expectations for this team, and I see Carlos Santana, unless he falls off a cliff, as being a positive addition to a team that expects to win.
Yeah, he's a perfect platoon option, I think, at this point in his career. Like, he's not the on-base machine he once was at his peak of his powers with Cleveland. Like, he was drawing a ton of walks and always getting on base. Last year was more of a league average guy getting on base. But the Twins had a massive strikeout problem last year. Carlos Santana struck out in just 15% of his plate appearances. So he can still work a count. He might not get on base as much, but he can still work a count. And defensively, 11 defensive runs saved at first base last season. So he is a plus defender. So between him and Kirilloff, who has really struggled hitting lefties, Carlos Santana still productive against righties. And at 1 year, $5 million, even if Carlos Santana completely falls off a cliff, there isn't much risk here. So I really like this signing. This is a solid little option. And I think the clubhouse at layer 2 to this is also pretty big for them because, having someone like that who has been to a World Series, the Cleveland Guardians almost won a World Series in 2016 over the Cubs. I think this is a pretty solid signing for the Twins.
I mean, when you start to peel back the layers of this thing, yes, let's start with the bad. He's going to be 38 years old, and at any given point, a 38-year-old baseball player could just not have it anymore, right? Their reflexes aren't the same, and when it goes over the cliff for baseball players at a certain age, it can be bad. And Judd will present a list of guys that were up against that age cliff, and the Twins did milk another year or two or more out of them. Right now, he's still valuable. In fact, like Declan alluded to the strikeout thing, there's multiple different categories where the Twins have a weakness and Carlos Santana brings a strength. So strikeouts and just non-competitive at-bats is one of them. The Twins I think they broke the Major League record last year, right, for team strikeouts in a season. They are giving away more outs at the plate. Put a ball in play once in a while and see what happens, right? If you hit a ground ball instead of a strikeout, 1 in every 3 or 4 times, it goes through for a hit. It moves a runner over. And so you're right. He comes in with a really, really respectable strikeout rate. Another one, too, is just effectiveness against left-handed pitching. The Twins offense was 19th in the major leagues OPS against left-handed pitching last year. Carlos Santana, still very good against lefties. OPS over 800 last year, which is about 75 points higher than the Twins OPS as a team against lefties. And then Declan mentioned too, the plus 11 defensive runs saved. So the Twins as a team had the worst first base defense in all of Major League Baseball last year. They were a minus 10 defensive runs saved for the season, which, by the way, is 20 runs worse than the teams at the top, like the Braves and the Giants. Carlos Santana was the best defensive first baseman in the entire league with that plus 11 defensive runs saved. I'll give you one more here, too.
Oh, no.
Oh.
What a cliffhanger.
Oh, my God. Like, is this to be continued?
For our audio audience, Phil's frozen right now on the screen.
Well,
so
his eyes are
what
closed.
A little cliffhanger he was about to drop there. I wonder what, he's not as good as he used to be for sure, but yeah, to Phil's point and just the defensiveness defensive prowess he brings too. This is a next to no risk maneuver. This is a solid little signing for the Twins.
Get this too, his career against the Twins.
Oh yeah,
31 home runs, 105 RBIs in 189 games, which is remindful of, I forgot how bad Jim Thome, largely as part of Cleveland and then the White Sox, tortured the Twins in 196 career games. So only 7 more than Santana's played against the Twins decks. Jim Thome had 61 home runs and 156 RBIs. I've always thought of Santana as a Twins killer.
Oh,
Jim Thome, I forgot, just destroyed these guys.
Thome,
61 home runs.
A-Rod, Griffey. Griffey was also a big-time Twins killer, especially when he was in Seattle. Yeah, those are good ones too. And then one more too. I'll get maybe this was the one Phil was going to go with. 98 career games just at Target Field. So you mentioned Carlos Santana being a overall Twins killer just at Target Field. An on-base percentage of 354, a slugging of 453. This guy has made a productive living just hitting at Target Field. So yeah, I mean, I get it. I gave you guys the targets, and in fact, I had originally Carlos Santana on my list. Him out.
What happened?
I crossed him off, just thinking I don't think this will be on their radar. Turns out, as I'm a couple cocktails in by Friday night when Dukes drops the scoop, I'm very excited about this move.
But it's a Twins type of move, right? Like it does. It feels like the Twins very much like to go to this well of big name, not still great, but potentially productive. And again, I will say this, for an organization that at times has made, especially the Falvey regime, has made questionable character decisions. Like they've brought in some real schleps, some guys I'm not a big fan of, right?
Yep.
They also have been careful at times. And this, to me, this is, how can I put this? This is a real potential corner locker guy.
Oh yeah.
The 4 corners, Target Field, home clubhouse, right? Correa in one, you get your vets there. This to me is like that, with a guy that's going to step in. He can lead from day one. He can show you. And I like the fact, I love the fact that a guy who's going to turn 38 on April 8th is still this productive defensively. I know it's first base, and I know the old thing is, first base can't be hard. But Declan, we've seen it. We've seen guys be butchers there. And it's a terrible place to not be productive, because because if you're not a good first baseman, it takes about one game to become glaringly obvious that there's going to be problems there.
Yeah, you can't hide people at first base. You can hide people at second. You can hide people in right field, even to a little bit of a degree. But first base is this one everyone thinks, oh, just put someone there that doesn't. No. You need some productivity there. Absolutely. One more thing here before, and this might just be a Judd and Declan scoring our Twin show here.
I'll get to my list.
Phil's list is going here. But the Twins did make one other signing late last night. They added another reliever to the bullpen, and a guy named Jay Jackson. So Jay Jackson last season with the Blue Jays. Now he's 36. He was kind of a late bloomer. He all of a sudden finally popped up and pitched in a handful of games last season with Toronto. He faced 116 batters last year, and he didn't make the playoff roster because I was wondering, was he on the playoff roster when the Twins? I don't believe he made their playoff roster, but appeared in about 25 games. I will say, in a small sample size of what he was able to do last season against 116 batters, opponents slashed just 171. They had an OPS of 558 against him, and he had a whiff rate, that's right, whiff rate of 30% last season. That's a higher whiff rate than Griffin Jacks, than Louis Varland, than Emilio Pagan, even Justin Topa, who they just got. Duran's whiff rate is 35%. So, look, this guy he signed a major league contract, so I would assume he's probably still in pencil to be in the bullpen out of spring training. We'll see how everything shakes out. But this is also just another layer to their biggest strength, which is the Twins bullpen. I don't think we have any real questions about how good the Twins bullpen can be. And in fact, they're going to definitely have to rely on it too, especially with still innings that are left on the board from Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda.
So Jackson was 3-1, 25 games. I think he was an opener in one game during his career, but he has been out of the bullpen his entire career. His ERA in 2023 was 2.12, but his fielding independent pitching was 4.2. Yeah. I think the bullpen now has become also, because I was going through it this morning, a numbers game. Like, they've just got a ton of depth there, because this is what we've talked about so many times on Judd's Hockey Show decks. This is goaltending, right? Like, relievers are just like this. You just don't know. So I think your best odds are to go for just depth, because, if Jay Jackson's great, awesome. If Jay Jackson stinks, okay, that's fine. Topa, I think, is an example now. I think that he is certainly more accomplished than Jay Jackson's considered, but yes. Topa's a guy that popped up at 32? Mm-hmm. Like, he could easily go down, but if he does, you've got depth there. My opening day bullpen right now, Duran, Jax, Thielbar, Topa, Staymount, Varland, Jackson, and possibly like a Brock Stewart.
I would be shocked if Brock Stewart's not in the bullpen next year. He was pretty damn good. I know he battled some injuries, but he had a very good season, so he's definitely in there. Yeah, and games are getting shorter. Starters are going shorter and shorter. And to your point, need depth in the bullpen. It's not the fact that they're going to have, this lights out bullpen and everyone hits their 100th percentile. There'll be some regression. Does Caleb Thielbar fall off a cliff? Is Brock Stewart just a one-hit wonder?
Right.
You need options. You need options here. So, I actually really like what they've done here in the bullpen.
I do think that they need one more starter to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they've got 5, but to what you brought up before, which is Sonny Gray's innings, those aren't really replaced. And,
correct.
And Paddock scares me. Like, if it works, awesome. But there's no way that he's going to step in. He's had Tommy John, twice now, missed all basically of last season until he came back in the playoffs. No way that opening day of spring training, he can be expected to just step in and replace the innings that Gray gave you. So I would say if there's one place that I still think they probably need to make a trade, and it might not be for a guy who we're blown away by. In fact, it probably won't be. But I would like to see them add another starter who you say, you know what, this is at least going to help more. Because something's going, guys are going to go down. Mm-hmm. With Paddock, there's some unknown there. There's just a lot of things in the starting rotation, which was a strength, I think, in 2023. There's a lot of things about that still scare me. If you're going to be a serious contender and again, win a playoff series, I think you need at least one more starter.
Yeah, that'd be the exciting part. They have a solid 1-2-3, obviously, from Pablo Lopez into Joe Ryan into Bailey Ober. That's pretty dang good as it gets for 1-2-3. But if you get one more, and especially if you get someone like big, like if it's like a Blake Snell, which again I keep throwing out there, and I know that's the fun one. I don't think that's going to be realistic or possible. But if you get Blake Snell, you're not just talking about winning a crappy division and going back to the playoffs. You got World Series expectations.
I think you're right.
The guy who's what's that?
I think you're right. So here's my thing now. I think you're right on Blake Snell, a guy like that being a complete no-go for the Twins, because while they now know that they're going back to Bally's, they're definitely going to take a haircut. I've been told, so the report is that they made approximately $55 million in rights fees last season. The report has been that teams like the Twins are going to take at least a 15% haircut. I've been told it's more, Because the one thing with Snell that I would say is if this was a normal TV situation, I could totally see Blake Snell for a year here. But with what's going on now, and with the fact that there was just, and I think it's been known that there was going to be a significant cut in the revenue made through your TV deal, it's probably going to have to be a trade, and it's probably going to be a pitcher again that doesn't excite the masses. But I just think that you need one more guy to at least feel like you're giving yourself the best chance possible. Snell would be great because that would create a ton of excitement and be a great move. But yeah, I don't think the lack of TV revenue is going to allow that.
So let's go down this TV path here too, because obviously the Twins, it sounds like they're going to go back to Bally's. They're going to go back to Bally again for at least 2024. And I think the thing that probably upsets a lot of people, myself included, is it looks like there's probably not going to be a streaming option. Now, Bally's didn't have the Twins as part of some Major League Baseball teams with Bally's do have streaming options. The Twins did not reach an agreement last year with them. They were one that were without them. So with no streaming option, this is basically the same situation the Twins have been in for the last basically year or two, which is if you're not an Xfinity or if you're not a, I believe, satellite TV provider, you cannot watch Twins baseball games. Which
Fubo,
is
right?
Fubo, I believe, does have them.
They have Bally's.
They're expensive. They're pretty expensive.
But that's about
too.
it.
That's it.
There's not a lot.
So what else can you tell us about the TV situation with the Twins?
Well, unfortunately, you're right. Like I checked on Friday because the one thing is there's this perception, and I'll explain in a second. There's a perception because there's an agreement in place that Amazon is going to come in and save the streaming day. So when I initially saw that the Twins Bally's new agreement, which comes from a bankruptcy proceeding, but the Twins contract was up, but the Twins basically don't have they don't have a set to go plan. So Bally's is going to be back. When I initially saw that report, I thought, okay, but what if Amazon comes in June or something and they can stream? Here's the problem. Amazon, all of the reports that you've read about the price that they're going to pay, Dex, and it has to be approved by a bankruptcy judge in, I think, May or June. Well, it also turns out Amazon doesn't owe Diamond Sports Group, which is the parent company of what is called Bally's. And Bally's is only involved through a naming rights deal that I don't understand why they're still involved because it just makes them look awful. But anyway, it turns out Amazon doesn't owe Diamond Sports Group any money until July. And so the prevailing theory in baseball is there's a very good chance they're never going to see a payment because it's a free look-see for the Prime folks. So Amazon Prime gets months to sort of look at the books, to look at the situation, right? Good chance in baseball's mind that they're like, oh, screw this. We're out of here. So I think what we're stuck with, and the Twins are going to take heat, and they deserve it. I think what we're stuck with is this. Another year of the status quo and streaming, probably not a realistic option at all until 2025 now. It's unfortunate. It totally sucks. Baseball as a whole needs to get its act together here. This is, and I understand the Yankees and Dodgers and Red Sox are like, hey, we're fine, we're cool, but this is ridiculous. This remains ridiculous. And the fact that people your age and younger who rely on streaming and direct to consumer content cannot get Twins games is beyond crazy. And the Twins are pissed off too, but the fact is they're also culpable. So yeah, where this stands right now, I think that there is a half-decent chance Amazon Prime never becomes part of Diamond. But here's the real conundrum too, Dex. So a few months ago, before the Amazon component was announced, this whole thing was the expectation of this to all of the clients of Diamond, which in this town involves Timberwolves, Wild, and Twins, that Diamond was winding down, which means going out of business, which means we'll carry you for one more year and then we're out of here. We're done. So now you're forced to find your own way. Well, if this Amazon Prime portion of the deal does work, Diamond does not plan to go away. They plan to stick around. They probably plan to stick around under a new company name and with a new, I would guess, president. But the point is, it's become more confusing now.
Yeah, Totally.
But for a baseball fan, short story, for a Twins fan, especially a Twins fan that wants to stream games, this is the worst news possible and flies in the face, unfortunately, of what the Twins and Corey Provis, when he got the TV job and talked about this, what they thought was going to happen.
Yeah, have fun walking that one back. That's going to be a little brutal to do. Judd, before we get to your list, let's close out with your list here of top 5. I know Phil's used geriatrics. I feel like that's a little offensive. Is that too offensive from Phil's point to use geriatrics, or is that about accurate there? Is that the right word to use?
They're old people for baseball players. They're old men for baseball players.
Sure. Well, how about some old men that need to lose some weight? Or old women, doesn't matter. You can be anyone. You're looking to lose some pounds here. It's February. Maybe you've fallen off the whole gym phase, but you're still looking to lose pounds. How should they do that, Judd Zolgad?
They should do it exactly the way that I did a couple of years ago, and that is through our friends at Livia Weight Control Centers, who are going to help you, as Declan just said, drop the weight, and then most importantly, they're going to help you keep the weight off. Receive a personalized and doctor-recommended program tailored to your unique needs, goals, and lifestyle. And here's the best news. What a deal. You get the first 3 months for free. 3 months for free. Imagine that. You've dropped several pounds. You're feeling great. You're looking great. And those first 3 months have been free. Are you kidding me? And Livia also is now offering breakthrough weight loss medication options. It's this simple. 855-GO-LIVEA. Livia.com. Livia, Livea.com. That is how you are going to drop the weight and feel great for spring and summer.
All right, man. Let's hear your top 5 list here.
All right.
Let's do this.
I got to call my list up here on my
MLB
phone.
thing. Here we go.
And you get the baseball. Too.
Major League theme.
Okay. And Phil's
out.
We miss you. He's on the phone with his
provider.
provider. We miss you, Phil. Okay, so what I am calling this, Declan, it's the top 5 Twin signings of guys 35 or older, of course, in honor of the Carlos Santana signing. He will turn 38 on April 8th, okay? So I'm going with guys that came here and contributed. I mean, the Twins have signed a lot of old guys who don't contribute, but once in a while, in fact, on at least 5 occasions, in fact, it's 5.5. Honorable mention, Kenny Rogers. If you recall, Kenny Rogers, in fact, I'll see if I can find it here in my notes. Kenny Rogers came here in his late 30s and contributed immediately. And so he is, the Twins got to the playoffs. He had been with, I think, Texas. This is 2003. Twins get to the playoffs. I think he got 1 out against the Yankees. That was it. So the contribution didn't extend into the playoffs. Pitched pretty well. But number 5 on my list, and this is a very short stint.
Okay.
But very important. Don Baylor. Traded from the Boston Red Sox to the Twins on September 1st of 1987 for a player to be named, and that was eventually a minor leaguer who did not make it, Enrique Rios. Here's the interesting thing. Don Baylor came here September 1st of 87 on a team that eventually would win the World Series. Yep. He played in 20 games in the regular season, so a very brief end-of-season stint. No home runs, 6 RBIs. In fact, he only had 1 home run as a Twin, Declan. But it's one of the most memorable in franchise history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
2-run homer in the bottom of the 5th in Game 6 against the Cardinals at the Metrodome. Tied the score at 5-5. His only home run as a Twin. And what I believe is the last day World Series game played. Ever. Right. But it was a Saturday afternoon at the Dome. Don Baylor, because of that home run at the age of 38, he was then released, I think, the following December. So he didn't spend much time here, but he made the most of it in that World Series.
Hell, I mean, 7 hits in that postseason run in the ALCS and World Series. So, yeah, a part-time player, a depth guy who ends up hitting, to your point, a very clutch home runs that helps extend their life in the World Series. And then, was a really productive little postseason player.
And you talk about you talk about a locker room influence. That man was intimidating. Yeah. All right, number 4. And the top 4 are really, really strong. Okay? So this is competition now.
Okay.
Number 4, Jim Thome. Age 39, he came here. Signed as a free agent in January 2010. Spent 2 years here. He had 25 home runs and 59 RBIs in 2010. Slashed 283, 412, 627. And in 179 games with the Twins that, of course, extended into the very disappointing 2011 series, 37 home runs, and 99 RBI. He also became the 8th player in big league history while with the Twins, game in Detroit, to hit 600 home runs. That happened in 2011 at the age of 40. Jim Thome, number 4. And that might seem low, but because I was going to put him in number 3 until I got to this.
Okay.
Paul Molitor, age 39 season as well. Signed as a free agent with the Twins in December of 1995. 2 seasons here, his final 2. He got his 3,000th hit during that time. And in 1996, in that same season, had a league-leading 225 hits and drove in 113 runs and hit 341 in his age 39 season. And then he slashed 312, 362, 432, 271 runs driven in, 38 stolen bases during a time where he was basically playing into his 40s, or he did.
Yeah.
Paul Molitor is number 3 on my list.
I guess the only thing that would have the tiebreaker for me with Thome over Molitor, obviously the numbers probably still favor Molitor, but what Thome was able to bring for that 2010 team, I mean, he got MVP votes, for God's sakes. Thome did.
Yep.
And I think we all, when we saw that one, it was more of the, this is a future Hall of Famer. And, he looked like he was falling off a cliff. He went from Chicago to the Dodgers, and it was like, this is tracking towards your classic geriatric random signing that's not going to contribute. Turned out the dude puts up 1,000 OPS, just hitting bombs and hitting memorable home runs in the first year at Target Field. So I would have these flipped, but I also wouldn't fall on a sword for it either.
Yep, and just one correction. Paul spent 3 years here. So he slashed 312, 362, 432 with 271 runs driven in and 38 stolen bases in 3 seasons that were played essentially in his 40s. You can't go wrong there. But number 2, above both of those, I'm putting Nelson Cruz.
Yeah.
Nelson Cruz again arrived at his age 38 season. Signed in January of 2019. He slashed 311, 392, 639, 41 home runs, and 108 RBIs. Was the unquestionable leader of the 2019 Bomba squad. Played parts of 3 seasons with the Twins. Hit 304, 386, 598, 76 home runs, 191 runs driven in 258 games. And then he was peddled in July of 2021 to Tampa Bay in a trade that brought back Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
Nelson Cruz is number 2.
At least with Cruz, and this wasn't the case with Thome, and I couldn't really tell you about Molitor, and I know Molitor still was really productive when he was here, but there was still a ton left in the tank with Nelson Cruz.
Yep.
Like he was winning. He was perennial all-star, always near the top of MVP votes. It was more of his presence and off the field spark helped a team that really kind of came down to earth in 2018, then popped up to win 100 games, right? Yeah. Like it was his presence on and off the field. He had a monster year. It's actually it's tied for one of his best seasons ever, just OPS wise, in 2019 at age 38 with the Twins. But there was still a lot left in the tank there. I don't believe, and that was only 5 years ago now. I don't remember us being like, "Oh, this is your classic, former slappy." This was, this is still a really good, productive player. Yep. But yes, he delivered tenfold too on the expectation.
I think it was when I got to spring training in 2020, but before the pandemic shut things down. I remember talking to I remember talking to Cruz in the clubhouse, and I'm like, "Have you thought about retirement? I mean, could this be it?" And he's like, "Oh, absolutely not." So yeah, because Jim Thome was a guy who was coming off like that time, to your point, with the Dodgers, and that didn't go well. And so, yeah, that was sort of the end. And with Paul, we didn't know. But yeah, Nelson Cruz, and the fact that Cruz came into that team in 19, and I mean, they didn't really have like a captain, right? At that point in time. And he just came in and was a corner locker guy, was fantastic. If anybody ever got more from Sano, it was Cruz. So Nelson Cruz is number 2, which leads to number 1. Signed as a free agent in February of 91. Signed as a free agent. He was 36. At least that was his age during the 91 season. He only spent a year here, but he has to be atop this list.
Yep.
Black Jack Morris. 1991 regular season. Got off to a bad start. Ends 18-12 with a 3.43 ERA. 35 starts. Get this, 10 complete games. He had more complete games at the age of 36 than teams do now. In 2 starts in the American League Championship Series against Toronto, 2-0 with a 4.05 ERA. In 3 starts in the World Series against the Braves, he started games 1, 4, and 7. 2-0, 1.17 ERA. Gave up 7 hits, walked 2, struck out 8 in 10 scoreless innings, of course, in that legendary Game 7. So my top 5 geriatric twins, Jack Morris, Nelson Cruz, Paul Molitor, Jim Thome, and Don Baylor, and 1 and 5 are largely because of World Series exploits, which I think carry a lot more weight. So
yeah, Jack Morris with the bullet at number 1. That's no surprise.
You can't help it, right?
No, not at all. Those are good. That's a good list, man. It's a pretty solid list.
Thank you very much.
Like
and Kenny Rogers, shout out. Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, the gambler. Phil is dealing with internet gremlins, so we did make it through this show.
What's going on with
him.
there's knock on wood. I'm fortunate that I'm still on here from home.
A different provider. We won't mention providers here. One provider is working out well for us. One provider in the city is not working out well, and that's the provider that Phil Mackey is using right now.
I thought Phil was on my provider. I did not know that.
Nope, Phil is on the provider I used to have too when I lived downtown. So, and if they ever want to sponsor programming on Score North,
we're not naming names.
Fully endorse.
We're not naming names. We will forgive and forget.
Exactly. Hit that subscribe button. We'll actually probably hit you with a couple more Twin shows this week. The Twins were on the grid over the weekend. We weren't able to get to that, and I know some fans tweeted at us too. So we will probably get to a grid. We'll get to some other things as well. So this is the Score North Twin Show. Thank you for listening.